Shellonnee Chinn, and I'm here with Theodore Kirkland, who is a journalist, an author, former police officer, former parole board commissioner. He's a father, and a husband, and a great fellow in our community. And he is the author of this book, Theodore Kirkland's Spirit and Soul, Odyssey of a Black Man in America. And I have chosen to sit down with Mr. Kirkland because of an experience I've had in the city of Buffalo. And I know more than anything from what I've heard in the community, from family members, that you experience a similar situation or similar experiences like myself. And I was a veteran teacher for a school by the name of Elwood Franklin School for 15 years. And things were going well for a while until a change of administration. And in that environment, being the only African-American teacher that they had hired, classroom teacher that they had hired in 127 years, I found myself in a hostile work environment. I wasn't treated the same way that the other white teachers were treated when I brought up issues of academic outcomes, when I went along and did presentations to show that the outcomes that our students were performing in the lower school area were less than what the kids were showing or demonstrating in the inner city. And that was frowned upon. And I was fighting for the curriculum, for the students, for all the students, and that it was a very environment that wasn't conducive for me. So ultimately, I was fired after 15 years. So at this time, of course, I'm suing them in federal court. And I know you had some experience with that. And, we've had rallies and just bring awareness that, these schools, like Elwood Franklin, like a lot of the other private schools, they receive federal funds because they're 501c3 taxes and organizations. So I really just came here for some, guidance. I mean, not only just for me, but for other people in our community that are experiencing hostile work environments, whether they're education, whether they're in the healthcare industry, whether they are working for NFTA, the Buffalo, whether they're working for the police department, the fire department, or from the doctors to the janitors. I mean, we have some serious issues. So I guess I wanted to sit down with you so you could let us know how things have changed or how they're the same. I mean, I know you just celebrated a birthday, so you're 82 years old. So
yeah,
I know.
I never thought about that.
You're 82.
Yeah.
That's shy of just a little under a century old. So I know you've seen a lot. And I think people my age and younger than me, I have 3 daughters and granddaughter, and I'm just hoping things will get better, but I don't hear or believe that Buffalo's changed much over the last 100 years.
Well, let me first commend you for what you've done. Commend you for filing the paperwork for this charges against this entity that you feel has done you an injustice. You've taken that in itself is a milestone, because most of our people are discriminated against daily, and yet nothing is done. And so you become an exception at that point. My book here that I wrote, the first book, I talk about that, throughout my earlier part of my life. Because as a black man in America, which in itself is a very difficult status to have, in a society where whites practice white supremacy. And I think that if you read that, you would get some answers maybe, or some aid or whatever. But let me just mention your thing for a minute. in a way, you're a very fortunate young woman. You know, you have filed the paperwork. You're in that process. I filed suits against the police department, against the prison system,
Really?
against the Board of Education.
Wow.
And against the prison system was the last one I filed, and they had a way of getting to my black lawyer. I didn't know he was on drugs, and so right away, you know, they were able to deal with him, and I didn't find this out until after about 5 years after that incident, which took place in the infamous Dana Moore prison, you know, where you hear people talk about Clinton prison where you guys escaped. Well, that's where that took place in 1980. So I have a little information in that area, but I want to take our conversation to something else that I think we're missing. I think that, first off, and I'll say something I had said to you before, and I say a lot of, God's been good to black people, contrary to what black people might think. Here I'm sitting next to you, a young woman, well educated, and you're depending on that white structure to give you justice. But is that the way it's supposed to be? Here we are as black people in the city of Buffalo, New York, and I guess we number a good 150,000, 200,000 in this town, and yet we own almost nothing. We do have now, according to the latest figures that was given to me by Pastor Jeff Carter, who said there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 278 black churches in that community. I think you could attest to the fact that, you know, some of these places you go out on the street and you see 4 churches on one block.
Exactly. You can't find
So
place.
so something good's going on there, you know, that they can do this. And yet at the same time, our kids are getting the worst education in the state of New York.
Right.
And they're being prepared to enter into the prison system so that they can provide jobs for those prison guards and whatever that abuse them one day or whatever, you know, like another. So we have a high crime rate. We have a high death rate, you know, from we shooting and killing each other. And that's because we, as black people, they have very little to be proud of. They don't see something to be proud of. But let's take a trip for a minute. Let's say that, all right, we got all these black churches. And if they were to combine themselves, get together, and create their own school system,
wow,
the state would give the money for it. You know, kids going there instead of going where they're going up.
right.
And the reason for that is that although we acknowledge the fact of white supremacy, we acknowledge the fact of racism, we seem to have it in our mind that for some reason our kids are supposed to learn in those schools. I mean, to me, that's kind of seeing things a little backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
And we punish the kids for it. There are teachers, now granted, there's some white and blacks who don't work hard at it. I'm not going to take that away from them. But the system itself isn't geared toward that. The unions have more power than the parents.
Right.
So what would happen if we decide to educate our own children and we got together and we created a school system?
Wow.
And we take people like you with that great education, and you become the superintendent or whatever, or teacher.
Okay.
But the point is, you know our children and you live in our neighborhood. We can talk to you. Kids will listen to you because you express a kind of love that they have yet to see in a public school system. How long are we going to be using our kids for the purpose of integration, as they call it?
Right.
The only thing I see that has worked as far as integration in Buffalo, New York, and many people who come here say they see more of that than anywhere else, that's these interracial relationships.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that is very common here in Buffalo. So, you know, if you ask my opinion, you know, you have done what you could do. You have filed a suit because you have been mistreated. Take that step further. And maybe you might be the one to sit down with some of these clergymen or whatever and say, look, why don't we move in that direction? I can't do it. They'd die and go to hell and come back before they let me tell them anything, because most people just follow suit here. But that, I think, is where black folks have to go from here. You know, I've lived so long at 82, and I'm proud to be 82, and I'm a good, fairly healthy 82. So I remember, I remember Dr. King saying something about it. You know, it would be great to live a long time because of something. Right. I forgot how to go.
His promising.
And there is something great about it, because you're able to look back. I can look back way before you were born. I can look back at how things were and how things are going to be. I can look back and see Italians. You know, now Italians control not just the city of Buffalo, but they control the whole state government. Mario Cuomo and on down. Wow. I mean, but that wasn't always. I remember when the Italians used to come to our neighborhood, horse and wagon, selling their wares, sharpening knives and things of this nature. And Jews were the same way. But now we look around, how did they go up and we come down so fast? We got sold a bill of goods. We've been, for the last, since 1950, for the last 60, 70 years, we've been strung out on something called integration. Yes. Instead of racial pride and racial power. They were fighting for power, we were fighting to integrate. Right. Okay, no one else starts talking about integration but us. So.
Well, we thought that initially, I think.
Well, we thought that. It wasn't well thought out. Right. Because you didn't know what the NAACP was. You never owned the NAACP. It was never financed by black people. That's a white organization. Right. That came into existence to kill the Niagara movement, which was a black organization. Oh, okay. You see, most people, know that, and only certain things they were doing or could do. Du Bois came into it. Dr. Du Bois came into it later on. They pulled him in and put him in charge of Crisis Magazine and whatever. Right.
But that was one of the richest experiences I had when I was in an environment where the students looked like me. I didn't know that there were any white teachers until really the 6th grade when I went to a Catholic school. I thought all the teachers were supposed to be black. I thought all the kids, my friends were supposed to be. I thought the principal was supposed to be black. I thought the nurse. That's what I thought school was supposed to be. And it was a very rich environment, culturally and academically. So I could see how that model could work, and use integration for other aspects. Right. You know, but not actually teaching the children.
Well, you know, my book it's 508 pages. I think it's 391 pages, if I'm not mistaken. It deals with the police department. Right. I organized the black police back in 1969.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Okay, we sued the police department because we didn't have enough black cops. Right. And we didn't have no Hispanics, and women were not considered police officers at that time. Wow. And so now, you know, we won that in the courts. And since I was a policeman, and I know we read a lot about cops, but I had one of the most richest and most beautiful experiences, or odysseys, I'll put it that way, of my life being a cop, being a policeman. I have received more awards than any other cop in history. Wow, in this city. Okay, no, just throw that out. And most of them from black people. I remember the first one I got. The second one, black people gave me a testimonial dinner. Never heard of before. They would take a cop and give a testimonial dinner for black.
Oh, I get that.
Do you understand what I mean? So that was, and when I left and went on the parole board, I missed that. I probably should have stayed to be a cop. I don't know, but.
It was different.
And then I came out, and later on I started working for 2 black women, and that was another rich experience. One was Alnisa Banks, who run the Challenger newspaper. I started writing for the Challenger. Then the next one, Sheila Brown, who now runs the Buffalo Radio, was the only radio station. And I had my own radio show, and I did that for 20 years. So I started, involved in all of that. And the most richest experience of my life has been with my own people. Right. My own people, children. Okay. And I used to love, when I left the police department, went on the parole board, I used to love, I'd go in and I'd walk the beat because I had enough seniority. They said, what do you want to do today? You want to ride the car? No, I'll walk the beat. And I could talk to children. Right. and they all knew me. You know, so you being a teacher, that's where I think we need to be gearing ourselves toward instead of fighting these cases of discrimination. Because when I see that now, it's not them, it's us. And when I organized the black police, I said, it's not that we're going to change the white cop. I'm not spending no time on that. We change us, and that will automatically change the white cop.
Right.
Training, having us with them, strong black men in a car with white men will change them every doggone time. You the overseer.
By not allowing it.
We cut down, wasn't no killing. As long as I was president, was a killing in Buffalo.
Wow.
And I remember walking to William Street, walking Jefferson Avenue, which is the main drag in Buffalo. And a guy walked up to me and he says, you know, ever since you guys organized, the white police have a better respect for us. Now that disappeared someplace out there in the wilderness
And
over the last 20 years or so. Yeah, you see, that disappeared. That school teacher in the public school system disappeared. We need to replace them. So that's what I see you doing more than anything else. And I hope that message is accepted the way in which I'm giving it, you know, to your audience. I give it with love for my people. That's the extent of it. We can do better. We don't have to beg nobody. We shouldn't have these homicides with our children. It's in the training. Much of it's in the training. They're trained to shoot, but they're not trained to communicate. Right. They're trained to shoot, but they're not trained to prevent. I saw that when I was in the academy. They don't no prevention program. If X does this, you shoot. Wow. But you don't have to. There could be an alternative to shooting that they don't even practice. I spoke at an NAACP meeting in downstate New York, Geneva, New York, really, not downstate, kind of upstate. Geneva, New York, at their convention in 2014. And one of the things I said to them, you know, in reference to these police shootings and what have you, that they should go and examine the training program of the police and make their own recommendations as to how they would best serve their community. Those recommendations, I mean, those policies are made by white police officers for white people.
And there's a difference.
And there's a vast difference, and we need to be a part of that if you're going
just
to do
like educating our children.
That's
just
right.
Like, you know, getting people, you know, their checkups for health care, all of that. You have to communicate differently to different people. It's not one stop shopping when it comes to that.
So, you know, and I go back to you now, and just continue your plight, you know, and you don't let it absorb you, though, but, you know, at the same time, I think that you have, and I go back and repeat this again because I think it's important, that you have a gift that we need. And the best way that gift shows up is through our children. I'm always amazed when a young man comes up and says he's a state trooper or he's a police officer and he wants to thank me, I was his hero or whatever, and I can get teary-eyed over that. Right. You know, that has been important to me. And I have an award where gang members met, awarded me a plaque at an affair one. And they had on there to our man Ted, who carried the weight. Right. I still have that. That's the best plaque I have. And I'm saying that there are black cops out there today who could do the same identical thing. Demand communities need to demand that of them. We fought too hard to get them in those positions. And they could do the same thing. But they're copying after the white dominant society. We were able to pull them away from that. They have to. Do that very well. Right.
Well, I want to thank you for your time and your insight. So in closing, what would you say as far as, like, for me, I am a teacher, but other people who might be in those environments that we have been subjected to, how would you help?
I would say the same thing to them. I think they have to look inward. Look inward and look at their community. Look at how best they could serve their community. Other races of people are doing that. They're not spending a lot of time trying to integrate. I don't know of not. We have Italians, Jews and everyone else in this town. I've never remembered them having a parade or dealing with or an issue dealing with their demand for integration. We need to look at self. Let's integrate ourselves first. Let's look inward and see how we can best serve our people.
Right.
That's my only recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
All
And
right.
this is Theodore Kirkland's book, Spirit and Soul, Odyssey of a Black Man in America. And you can get it through Amazon.
Mhm.
And you're working on the second book.
That's right.
Okay.
That's all the old man can do. He's working on the book, okay?
Thank